Ladies and gentlemen, big K news.
I think we might be live. Kia ora. Good evening, sir.
Hello. Just realised that I had my lighting on like full blast.
Just a
I'm going
quick
for
check-in.
Mood lighting.
Sorry about the unprofessional look. Did the audio crash for you? Like the theme tune? It just completely crashed for me, so I wasn't quite sure if we were wrapping up or not. Make sure anyone in the
I didn't even notice.
No? Yes? So, yes, there you go. People are saying you are live, so it must have crashed. We were just sitting there looking at each other, I think. No, I think we're there. I think we're in.
Okay.
Hi, Chewy.
Weird.
Yeah, I don't
Hello.
know. The system said something about not playing the something or other. No issues at this end. Oh, okay. All right. So this is my problem. I acknowledge something and I shouldn't have. You should never tell. Never show behind the curtains, Chewy. Never show behind the curtains. How are you, man? What's going down in Funky Town?
Oh, not a lot. The wife and I are trying to speed run watching like multiple seasons of Yellowstone at the moment.
Yeah. Where are you up to?
The hunt for winter content. It just started season 4.
What are we at? Where are we at with season 4? What's going on in season 4? I watched them all, so. But where is the storyline?
Yeah, some of our listeners may not have watched all of it. Big shootout. Big fucking shootout.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's dead. And then you come back at the start of the new season and it's like months later.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I always
good.
thought
It's
I always
good.
thought about Yellowstone because in like the very first episode of Yellowstone, not the 76 or 23, when and this is not a spoiler because it's the first episode of episode 1, series 1. So if you haven't seen it, this is not going to kill you. How one of the brothers gets killed. One of the brothers of the family gets killed, gets shot and killed. And then it's like he's in the thumbnail for the next 7 years. And I was like, holy crap, how would you feel to be the brother who died in episode 1, series 1, and you see yourself in the thumbnail for the next 7 seasons? So I thought that was a bit interesting.
Just to get royalties forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a show I avoided for ages.
Oh,
I don't
really?
know why? Maybe the promos didn't make it look very interesting or something. Or, but yeah, it's one that I put off for ages until they did all the prequels. Like
that's where we watched it.
1883 and 1902. And like I watch those and they are legitimately amazing shows. I was like, well, I've kind of got to finish it now.
Yeah, my favourite of the 3 series is actually, is it 1883? I keep saying 1876, but I think that's George Washington.
No, it's 1883.
I think that's the best. I think that was the best of the 3 of them. And we watched that first. And as you say, that then dragged us into the next one, which dragged us into the next one. So we've seen 1923, but not the new series. So we're going to watch the new series. I'll tell you, it's funny, because it's what you avoid, but you know that's good. So we have just started watching The Bear. And I've had The Bear on my watch list for a long time, kind of avoided it. The missus was like, well, it's in a kitchen. How good can it be? And I'm like, oh, it's won all these awards and it's, and oh man, we're steamrolling that. We've done the first season in about 4 days. Because the other thing is they're short. They're only 35-minute episodes, so it's easy as well.
Yeah. I watched a little bit of The Bear, just purely because I've got a lot of friends and acquaintances that have worked in hospo.
Yeah,
and they said on their first season, they're like, if ever there was a TV show to give me hospo PTSD,
yep,
it's The Bear. And,
lots of writings about how accurate it is.
Like if everybody that works in their industry is pointing to this and going, yeah, that's pretty true. That's true to what I love. I'm like, cool, reality.
The other thing that's on my list, which everyone else has seen, and it's apparently great, is White Lotus. Haven't watched a single minute of that. And that I think after we finish The Bear, we'll be into White Lotus. I think that'll be next.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks for coming and joining us today. We thought we'd just talk about our favourite TV shows and then leave. Is that going to be Is that all we're going to do tonight? Something?
This is the long-term plan for when politics returns to normalcy. That we're just going to do a hard pivot into TV and movie reviews. So
Yeah.
if you want to pass that on to your representatives, that if they could all stop doing meth, that would be great.
Once we've made ourselves obsolete by having to point out all the bullshit going on at the moment, but we are there. Okay, so tonight's show there's a plethora of different sort of clips along the way that we're going to be doing. First of all, I've already seen gone past in the chat Tamatha. Tamatha is not live tonight, and unfortunately, we had a pretty big technical glitch. The system that we use records locally and records straight to the cloud, and then you can upload locally. This is sort of my bad, but I didn't know it was going to do this. If the audio is crap when you're talking and when recording in the system, the local recording is always really good. So unfortunately, for about a third of the conversation with Tamatha, the recording really packed it in, and I could only just hear her. I could hear her, but I kept going, I'll just overdub the local audio when we're finished. She was using a cell phone, and apparently the lesson I've learned today, Chewy, is when it's uploading locally from a cell phone as opposed to a computer, the audio is no different. So we lose a third. I'm not going to show it. It would be too difficult to put out. So we're going to lose a third of that interview, unfortunately. I originally got her on to talk about these first responders, the laws about assaulting first responders. But I think we actually had a more interesting conversation because we are going to talk about that, the first responders, and we're going to do that by listening to Sir Chris of Luxon on breakfast this morning and watching a 3 News item tonight. And that's what I had Tamatha on to talk about. But what I realised was when Lady Chris of Luxon was on with Mr. Bridges this morning on New Zealand Herald's version of BHN, they had a really interesting series of questions. And I thought for the first time ever, Chewy, and look, I'm going to be really arrogant and say I don't think anyone else has picked up on this yet. And it's actually, if what I'm saying is accurate, and this is why I want to talk to Tamatha about it because she's in the house, but it's actually really serious. Ryan Bridge starts the conversation with something like, do you just need, why aren't the courts listening to you and why aren't they doing what you tell them to? And I was like, aren't we supposed to have an impartiality between the government and the courts? What happens when a government informs the courts on what they need to do? Now, forget about these guys. If we're okay with that, if society is okay that the party that's in charge can instruct a court how they have to rule, then what they're saying is when the other guys are in, those lefty lunatics, they can just tell the court that they're not allowed to rule that way. And I don't think this conversation's been had yet about a government instructing a justice system what a judge has to do with sentencing. Now, as far as I know, a government makes the laws and the court enforces the laws, and there's a gap between the two. But this government is saying to the court, you now have to rule the way we say. Unless I'm missing something, that sounds like something Putin does. Like, honestly, and I might sound arrogant, but I've heard no one talk about this. And I guess to our detriment, neither have we until now. But when I heard Ryan Bridge ask that question this morning of the courts aren't doing what you tell them to, I was like, I don't know if that's how a democracy is supposed to work. Yeah, that is the conversation I managed to get out with Tamatha before we had the glitch. So that's a really good chat, and we will be playing that. Chewy.
Yeah, I was going to say at that point, why have courts and judgment? Just have Mark Mitchell come in on a black horse and sentence you to death, and then ride off. You know, think of all the savings.
Yeah,
like of time, of money. That's all that matters, right? Not justice.
And I mean, forget that this might be a party that most people watching right now aren't fans of. if the government's allowed to tell the courts how they have to rule, then what they're saying is, when you soy boy leftists, ban the police, whatever it's called, when you guys run, that we're okay with you guys telling the courts what to do and how to rule. And of course they're not. And if they're not okay with the other side instructing the courts on what sentencing they must adhere to, then they have to be okay with the other side doing that as well. And they won't be. And I think they won't be because they shouldn't be doing it. Not just because there's a political ideological difference. My gut tells me, and logic tells me, that the Prime Minister shouldn't be able to tell a judge, this is how you have to rule. Doesn't feel right to me. So we missed the conversation with Tamatha about the first responders assaults, but we got that part of the conversation, and it's interesting, so we'll play that tonight. Long-winded. Yeah. I'm sorry, Chewy. Long-winded. But the other thing is we've got heaps of other stuff. Candace Owens on tonight, and I know some people are going to roll their eyes with Candace Owens, but there's a beautiful, but she went on Surrounded, and there's a beautiful bit where one of the guests to Surrounded just obliterated her, and then Candace Owens goes into this kind of, she spends about a minute and a half telling this person how that this person won't let her answer the question. And rather than answering the question, she spends 90 seconds telling her how she won't let her answer the question. It's just, when the right don't know what to do, they fall over. What else we got, Chewy? A story I'm chasing at the moment, and hopefully we'll get access to one of the journalists from Israel. There's a newspaper called Haaretz, and they have reported over the weekend that they have been speaking to IDF soldiers. The IDF soldiers have confirmed with journalists from Haaretz that they have been instructed by those above them to communicate with people at food stations using live rounds, live ammunition. That's how they are to communicate, and that's the word they use, communicate with starving Gazans lining up for food. So as far as put it this way, in a court of law, there are now IDF soldiers who would testify that the government is instructing them to shoot at Gazans lining up for food. So that was an article released over the weekend. I've approached the newspaper to see if we can get someone, but it's probably a low chance, so we'll just highlight it tonight as well. Gosh, lots going on. More than that as well. It's a big night. Yes. Anything else there, Chewy?
Yeah. Other stuff coming out of Gaza. I've seen this reported a few places, but not confirmed yet. But there's a couple of stories floating around of bags of flour, of some of this food aid that they're getting from this American mercenary group, potentially being spiked with pharmaceuticals.
Oh, that's good.
There are a few images floating around about that. And if you'll remember, quite a wee while ago, I mentioned about Israelis that were graduating their military officers training, no longer facing the camera when they put up their graduation photos.
Mm-hmm.
There's been another graduating class, and they are 100% facing the opposite direction from the camera because they don't want their faces out there, because they know that facial recognition will ping them for war crimes.
Yeah.
If that's not a bigger admission that you're doing some fucking sketchy shit, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. Yep. Lots going on tonight. Let's just do a couple of chats first of all, so I don't get too far behind. Ryan Bridge setting up Luxon for a trap question. I think that's giving Ryan Bridge a little bit too much credit. Danger of Mouse says this government is trying so hard to be a Trump-type government. This is why they're going to be one term. Well, I mean, fingers crossed, but I've given up making predictions on who's going to win elections. And on Reddit, NZ Politics Mountain Tui Reload uploaded a photo of mainland butter costing $18+. Some people are also saying the rates rise along with cost of living, such as price of butter, are concerning. I think a bit more than concerning, but Mountain Tui doing good work there, obviously. All right, Chewy, let's start with a conversation that we haven't even talked about yet. On the Hui this afternoon, they did Julian Wilcox did a bit of a deep dive into David Seymour. and this is two parts. One of the academics that David Seymour has smeared with his derangement syndrome tweets, has spoken to Julian Wilcox. So let's have a look at that conversation. We start the conversation with a bit of a wrap up of what the story is about, which we kind of all know, but let's get up to date. And then Julian speaks to Dr. George Lakey, I think it is, about the ACT Party and what they're doing at the moment.
It has received official complaints about the Deputy Prime Minister, David Seymour's Victim of the Day social media posts. But the leader of the ACT Party is defending his actions as a bit of fun. The question is it playful or harmful?
Harmful. I vote harmful.
David Seymour has been loud and clear about the Regulatory Standards Bill.
This bill is a crucial piece of legislation for improving the long-term quality of regulation in our country.
But did he cross the line during the submission process?
Yes.
The Deputy Prime Minister has targeted academics that oppose the bill with his Victim of the Day.
And just let me reiterate this.
So shitty.
But remember, this is the David Seymour who anytime the media asks him, he says, we want to start a conversation. And the problem is when someone enters that conversation but disagrees with them, this is the response to them. Now, if you weren't here last week, I've contacted Dame Anne Salmond, and she's basically said, I don't want to come out, put my head above the parapet again. So what David Seymour has done is he's got his way, because Dame Salmond is now withholding communication to the media, well, certainly to us. We're not really the media, based on what all the stuff that's happening around what he's done. So he says, hey, let's have a conversation. She says, well, this is my thoughts and these are what I think. He says, you're a victim and you're deranged. His followers attack her. She removes herself from the conversation. That's the path they're doing, and that's what's happening at the moment. So let's just not ever believe Mr. Seymour when he talks about wanting to have a conversation. The conversation he wants to have is I speak, you listen. That's the conversation that Mr. Seymour wants to have.
Social media posts.
If people want to go out and make completely incorrect statements, then I'm going to get a bit playful and have some fun with them.
Having fun or not, the leader of the ACT Party has singled out MPs and academics, accusing them of suffering from, quote, regulatory standards derangement syndrome.
The only reason I can think of for all these totally factually incorrect statements about the Regulatory Standards Bill is that there's some sort of sinister syndrome out there.
I spoke to one of those academics that was targeted by the Deputy Prime Minister's social media posts, Dr. George Lakey, the Associate Professor for Medical Oncology at the University of Auckland.
It's someone who doesn't know much about the world. Professor of Oncology, Associate Professor, one of those underskilled, underpaid workers we keep talking about. Or maybe someone who knows what he's talking about.
In your role as an Associate Professor, a public health doctor, a cancer specialist, you've raised concerns about the Regulatory Standards Bill. What are those concerns?
My main concern about it is it puts too narrow a focus in its set of principles about how regulation should be made. It's really trying to make constitutional change for our country sort of through the back door of a majority parliamentary vote.
Do you consider it a part of your job to raise those issues and those concerns publicly and make submissions in this regard?
I think I already make those submissions as a citizen of the country, but the submissions that I make certainly connect with my work in healthcare and my work at the university. And as a university person, of course, it's part of our role to speak out and take part in that side of society. But I would like to think that foremost what I say as a citizen who's involved in our country.
What then do you make of the criticism made by the Deputy Prime Minister, David Seymour, of people like yourself who have made submissions against his bill?
Well, usually when you start having a go at the person, it means that you've actually run out of a serious response to what they have to say. So I thought it's a real shame, in fact. I remember when I was a kid, we had Muldoon who'd come out with that sort of stuff, and I think people got sick of it after a while, but it seems to have come back.
The Deputy Prime Minister, David Seymour, has said that if people want to go out and make completely incorrect statements, that they should be challenged on them. What is your response to that?
Well, challenge me on the statement in that case. You don't have to like make a joke about like my mental state, for heaven's sake. We can all have a disagreement about things. And I think one of the curious things about ACT is you will find elements of truth in what they say, but the trick that they do is they leave out so much. And really that's what I have in my own submission tried to say is that you need to have a broader set of values for your constitution, for your country. You can't just do it all with dollars and individualism. You have to be thinking about some other parameters.
There you go. That's as much as we're going to hear from tonight. And such a good point and wise words. And I know it sounds a little bit kind of high schoolish, Chewy, but like if you've got nothing to say, nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Or that idea about as soon as ad hominems come out, does it mean you've lost the argument? Well, not always, but if you can't come up with a rebuttal, as the associate professor said, so debate my points. Like, have we heard Seymour do that to any of these people who have made a case against his? For any of those people, have we heard David Seymour make a case? Just a little inside word. We've invited Mr. Seymour on again this weekend and Mr. Luxon again this weekend. Don't expect to hear back. So maybe we need to get him in front of a camera and put these people's premises to him and get him to actually debate it rather than putting up a stupid, pithy, bullying social media post.
Look, hasn't David Seymour lost enough debates recently? Does he really need to lose some more? I would propose, yes, he does, publicly. And I think that's why this is the tactic that he's using, right? It accomplishes so many of the things that he wants to happen. It casts intellectuals in a bad light, something that his followers will just eat up, no matter how many of them actually have university degrees as well. The idea of university academics basically coming forth and offering an opinion based on real world knowledge of the topic. Like, all of these people have extensive background in history and treaty negotiations and Crown Māori relations, the whole works. One of them's won New Zealander of the Year, for fuck's sake. You know, like, these are high caliber people. But he wants to have a crack at those, and he wants to have a crack at the public for doing low quality submissions. So it's very clear that he would rather he just hears for his chosen people, or from no one at all. Please stop interfering with my bill. And what he's doing is definitely, I think it comes under the umbrella of what is it? Stochastic or something like that. Terrorism.
Stochastic. Yeah,
stochastic terrorism. And I mean, because you've got that terrorism word in there, it's a bit like, whoa, am I going too far? But the idea is to not only make the target put their head down back in their trench and not stand up and say, hey, this is wrong, but also to serve as a message for anybody else wanting to do the same or thinking that they should do the same, is that it's just not worth it. And we have seen this tactic be very, very effective. Probably one of the clearest cases would be Dr. Susie Wiles around the COVID stuff.
Yeah, her
life became a living fucking hellhole. Her employer didn't protect her back, and she was an academic that was involved with the University of Auckland. So yeah, if these guys, this army of flying monkeys that David Seymour can unleash in your direction, know that your employer, if you're an academic, possibly won't have your back. Maybe, maybe not. So really, is it worth it? Either way, it achieves what David Seymour wants to happen.
The thing that always frustrates me about undermining academics or undermining scientists or any of that kind of stuff is they're exactly the first people this group of people will go to if they have cancer. You know, it's like, why would you, like, if this academic who spent their life studying this issue is the foremost expert in the country on this issue, and if they're wrong, and the reason they're wrong is they're not sensible, why would you seek source information from this academic or expert who's just spent years doing the same thing, but because they happen to be your doctor? Like, it's like you can't, so all of you people who are basically saying poo-pooing the academics because of them being academics, I really hope you're growing lots of roots and leaves so you can look after your own cancer when it kicks in, because surely you have to be consistent and not actually go there when those people say what you should and shouldn't be doing. Just saying.
I mean, do you think David might be panicking a little bit? This seems like a panicked move to me. And maybe it's a panic born of looking at the tally of who's standing up against your bullshit bill. Crown ministries, including his own one, disagree with it.
Yep.
Former treaty negotiators, Chris Finlayson, says it's bullshit. It shouldn't happen. You've got notable academics that have spent a lot of their career looking at Māori and Crown relationships and treaty issues and all of that. Decades of experience, decades upon decades of experience saying that's a bad idea. The public doesn't like it. Your coalition partners are looking pretty shaky on it. People have literally gone into the streets because of an issue related to what you're doing. And it's already been beaten 3 times. So what have you got? This is a dead duck.
When we hear from Duncan last week, Labour MP, who said that Winston was wily, and he said in their agreement that he would agree, or New Zealand First would support a regulatory standards bill, not the or not acts. I do wonder if Mr. Peters is going, as strange as it sounds, is Mr. Peters is going to be the white hat, the hero of the thing by saying, yes, I agree to sign up with I'm not prepared to sign up with that one. Do better. Let's flesh it out. And actually, whether it's just that he wants to be the big swinging dick and go, you might be Deputy Prime Minister now, but I'm still in charge, sonny boy. You've been around for 5 minutes. Or whether he has some actual objection to what it may do. It'll be interesting to see. I do also get the sense as well that if there's anyone who's spineless enough to only go with the will of the people, it would be Christopher Luxon. And if Christopher Luxon gets wind of the pushback against this on top of the pushback against the Treaty Principle Bill, and goes, our job now is to solve problems that get us unelected. So in other words, we want to be re-elected, what they may say about this. Luxon may have more trouble than Peters, because Luxon's probably not smart enough to say a bill rather than acts bill. But yeah, it's strange to think that maybe Winston Peters might be the saving grace.
Oh, look, I hate that. I hate it. I hate that we're putting so much hope into fucking Winston and his soupy brain that we're just going to get him on a day that he decides to go, what do I always do? I blow up coalitions, and today's the day. And he walks away. I think Luxon sat through the coalition negotiations playing fucking Candy Crush on his phone with a note that says, let me know when I'm Prime Minister. So I've got absolutely zero hope in that. I think the idea that New Zealand First will support an RSB, maybe not this RSB, is even more worrying, because what form will that take? At least we know what this one is, know your enemy sort of thing. And I just think this is just another symptom of a really bad coalition negotiation where Luxon got absolutely snookered by anybody that walked into that boardroom.
Yeah.
And I think we are seeing our version of what other countries are seeing, is that a government that knows that it is doing deeply partisan, unpopular stuff as quick as possible. Like, I'm talking about Trump's government here as well, but I think it just so happens that it's happening here as well. They are speed running as much bullshit as possible, knowing that a very small portion of the population, our chat, are going to notice. The rest of the public are going to go, I don't know, the vibes seem sussy on this for about 4 years until they wake up.
Yeah.
And by that stage, it's too late.
It'll be one of those instances where we're seeing like Latinos for Trump kind of going, hang on, this is not what we voted for. There'll be some.
I'm not in my house. I'm in a detention facility. How did that happen? Yeah, like it's just, what was that thing that Bannon said? Flood the zone.
Yeah.
Right? There's so much stuff. Like this is the reason why our long show is 90 minutes, right? There's so much stuff.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff. The RSB is an assault on everything. Our healthcare is being run into the ground so it can be piecemeal sold off, public money funneled into the pockets of the already wealthy. Our housing is fucked. Homelessness fucked. Child poverty. All of these metrics, none of them going in the correct direction.
Let me wrap up this section with asking one philosophical question. It's kind of like if a tree falls in the wood and nobody's here to hear it, doesn't make any noise. What about this? How can you lose every negotiation in an office and still end up being prime minister? Like, how do you become prime minister whilst losing every negotiable point in the build up to becoming prime minister? It's just mind numbing.
You are talking about, as you said, Chris of Luxon, right?
Sir Chris of Luxon.
Sir Chris of Luxon. That's what he wants. Look, you go back to the noise about, before Chris Luxon had even left Air New Zealand, they soft launched him as a potential prime minister with nothing to earn it. It was just basically, he's been a New Zealand CEO. Cool. Why isn't Rob Fyfe prime minister then? You know, it was just, it was, the carpet got rolled out for him.
Yeah.
Like, he was always picked to be a national leader and a prime minister. He got parachuted into a nice safe spot. Everybody fucking got out of his way. There's not a piece of this job that he's fucking earned. And I think that's the thing that really annoys me, right? Like, even Key earned his role more than this guy did.
Yeah.
Like, it's just been gifted to him. And then you're like, maybe there's something that we haven't seen. That all of these people that know that he was coming into this position, they know him better. He's been in this job now for long enough to go, why did you guys think that this was the guy?
Yeah.
He hasn't earned anything.
But then if it wasn't him,
political
who's
judgment
it going to be?
is always wrong.
Who's it going to be?
Always wrong.
Collins
Like, you
again?
come at him with something difficult, or he said something stupid. You need a day and a half for him to fucking work it out. And you'll do that publicly in the media. And still, how many knives are being sharpened in the National Party? How many hushed meetings are being had in the halls of, like, do we have the number to roll this guy yet? Like, we are hanging so much hope on just really outside the box stuff. You know, is Winston going to blow up the coalition? Is Rimmer going to do something obscenely stupid that critically damages him? Is there going to be a spill in National? all of this is insane stuff. I want it to happen, but it's all insane, and it's just going to keep on rolling to the election.
All right, let's have a look at a couple of other things. We want to say a big thanks to D-Bot and to Stretch Paulson and to Exodus and to John 49er, who have all signed up to be patrons in the last 10 days or so. Also to Kia Whip, who has upped their patronage. Thank you very much for being a part of what we do. I think we're about to, just so you guys know, we're about to come out with a bit of a plan on where to for next year. And the where to for next year is going to involve talking to patrons and talking to people who are currently not yet patrons who would like to be patrons. So for those of you who aren't a part of the Patreon patronage, have a think about what you'd like to see happen with B18 over the next sort of 18 months. And maybe at the end of this week, maybe at the start of next week, we'll have a bit of a chat about what we're planning and sort of what we need to go in that direction. We are 100% viewer and listener funded at the moment. And that includes a little bit of income from YouTube because it's obviously being viewed. And we need to figure out the next 18 months leading up to the next election as it being so important. If you're someone, and look, I'm not doing a pitch for you to sign up to Patreon right now, because like we've said before, a patron who can stick with us for 18 months is much more important to us than a patron who comes along and gives us a couple of months of a significant investment. So because that's how we project next year. We'd like to do a tour around the whole country next year to do debates with local politicians and come to your town and do something live. So I'm just putting it out there for you guys to have a think about how you want to be involved in the next 18 months. And we will be coming back to this conversation, let's say before the end of next week. Thank you to the patrons who have been a part of us. Patreon.com/Big Hairy News if you want to be a part of who we are. Not pitching for that. It's not a hard sell today. I'm just actually projecting to the family. There's another family meeting coming up in the not too distant future about the next 18 months. Also want to say huge thanks to everyone who purchased the merch in the last few weeks. I have had a very busy kind of few days. All of the merch that has been ordered is out on couriers if it's not to you yet. I haven't had time to put out the actual email with the tracking number. I'll try and get that done tomorrow. You may have already received your merch before the tracking number comes in, but if it hasn't, it's on the way literally right now, and you might get a tracking number tomorrow and actually the merch the next day. And very finally, very, brand new podcast by Dr. Gary Payenda is up and running. And there is the first episode on the YouTubes. If you would like to be a part of this and check out what he's doing, then the easiest way you can do it if you're watching on YouTube is to check out YouTube, check out the episode. There are episodes going to be coming out at minimum every week from now on. Gary is probably a bit more stream of consciousness thinker, which means he may have something to say late on a Wednesday night, and he might record it and it might go up on Thursday morning. But at least every week there will be episodes of Gary Payenda's new podcast, The Frontline. It's also on Apple. It's also on Spotify. If you are someone who uses Apple and Spotify, then go check out The Frontline with Dr. Gary Payenda and give it a like and give it a subscribe on those platforms as well. Right. Chewy, you good? Anything else? I should do the super chats, eh?
I am good. Look, the other thing I'd like is that since we're talking about the BHN family of video podcasts on the electric YouTube, don't forget Locked Out. Craig did an excellent sit-down chat.
You liked this one, didn't you? You liked it.
I did like that. I did like it because it's got Chloe and it's got Craig. And look, that's what I really wanted because the Greens put out their alternative budget ideas, that sort of thing. And the same thing happened as what happened last time. The media looked at it, put it out there for a little bit, and they didn't actually fucking talk about it. So to have Craig, as an economist, sit down with Chloe and go through the nuts and bolts of what they're proposing, like if anybody is just out there going, oh, the Greens don't know finance, they're dreamers, point them in that direction of that video because it's great.
And look, I won't tell you what it is right now, but a message I got from Craig today says that he has a world exclusive on tax evasion. I won't tell you who it's against or who it's around, but that's what Craig has teased for this week, a world exclusive on tax evasion from a particular group or sector or individual or organisation or country. I won't give you any more hints than that. So that'll be dropped on Thursday morning. We're recording that, I think, Wednesday afternoon. A world exclusive in his next episode. Frontlines drop every Thursday morning, unless things like the budget come up and that delays us by a day. Gary's are going to be a bit more when they're ready, they'll go out, but it will be at minimum one a week. So we'll figure out the rhythm of Gary's as we get into it. Cool. Super chats. Let's just do these. Thank you for your super chats. I was done with ACT years ago, says Laura. Now I'm extra done. Chewy, you were saying something about all the names have changed. So this is Kiwi Bird.
Yes.
Yeah? Do we need to do anything, or does anyone need to do anything?
I don't know what YouTube's done.
We haven't changed anything yet. We haven't done anything on our end to change anything.
YouTube's done something and taken away everybody's chosen screen names and is just putting up their whole YouTube handle, which is weird.
Last time Seymour made a case, he lost at Oxford, says Kiwi Bird. Oh my God, this is so much Trump-style politics. Yeah, that's about what Seymour's doing. How can Luxon not realise that his legacy is going to be the most racist, anti-science, sexist, misogynistic, hateful, corrupt government in modern history? Well, I mean, I don't disagree with you, Gold, but if he can get in, do 2 terms, get a knighthood and get out, and then go sit on a bunch of boards from all over the world, then, he's done his job.
What's about that? If it's someone that came into that job with the express purpose of doing those things, right? He's like, I'm just a bastard. I'm going to do this. This is my ideology that I hold in my wizened black heart, and we're going to do it. I would think more of that person for just being intellectually honest than what I do about Luxon, because I don't necessarily think that he believes in a lot of the things that are happening because of this government, but it's just the path of least resistance. He's just bobbing around in the lazy river in his little floaty, and he's just letting Winston and Seymour do whatever the fuck he wants, and he can just go say, oh, look, I'm laser focused on the issue of the day. Look, I'm working really hard. What I'd say to you is stop bothering me. There's nothing you can do about it. See you in a couple of years. It's CEO behavior. It's this is what I mean when he hasn't earned it. This is what happens when someone parachutes in going, I'm going to have a go at being a politician. Like, he doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know how to be a leader.
Well, that kind of rolls into the next conversation because we've already premised this at the start, a conversation with Tamatha Paul coming up shortly. But this is sort of a 3-part conversation. The first part is watching 3 News talk about the, what do they call it? The coward punches. It used to be called the king hit. I mean, it's going to be so hard to actually do this in the courts because how do you know? How do you know if it's a king hit? I mean, most people aren't ready for a punch when they get punched, or else they wouldn't be standing where they were standing. And also this does roll into conversations around attacks on first responders. So let's have a look, first of all, at the setup to the story from 3 News tonight.
The government has announced it will introduce legislation to make a coward punch a specific offence. It used to be called a king hit when the victim is hit unaware. The government says people can...
Because you're not aware, Chewy. Most people are really aware that they're going to get hit. They stand there and they are aware that the fist is coming. They're going, okay, I'm aware that that's going to hit me. That's most people apparently who get punched. They're aware. Not like every single person is unaware to some level.
Can be killed or suffer lifelong brain injuries. Yet perpetrators often receive lenient and insufficient sentences. But one prominent lawyer says existing laws already deal with this kind of offence. Adam Hollingworth reports.
Punches like...
Oh no, not meaningless legislation that create a good headline on the Herald that aren't going to help society one iota but look good in print and enable you to say we're tough on crime. Not that kind of legislation again, shall we?
These can be deadly, and that's why the government is acting.
Well, it's the level of cowardice for a start. The victim has no notice, and because of that, the chance of them defending themselves
5 to 10
is just
working
impossible.
days.
So we want to...
I'm wondering why Mr. Peters is dressed like Tony Soprano. Well, has he just been to like a dinner theatre or something? I'm confused by the look.
Spell out how acceptable it is.
what we're doing with this legislation is sending a clear message from Parliament to the courts and to society as a whole that this is something that we won't tolerate, and if you do it, you'll get an extra severe sentence.
We're on the side of the victim, not the offender.
Under the proposed changes, maximum sentences would be 8 years if the offender intended to cause injury or acted with reckless disregard for safety, 15 years if the offender intended to cause grievous bodily harm, and life for a culpable homicide.
Can I just say as well, none of the ones they're showing are what we think of when it's a coward's punch. Those three last ones, which looked horrific, the people were face to face the whole time. That's not a coward's punch. A coward's punch is when you fly in from behind, no seeing, no nothing. So even the media is now talking about this legislation when these people, I mean, it's horrific footage. I'll mute it while I play it, are standing in front of them, hitting them, standing in front, hit them. So it's not that they're not king hits. So is the media just got it wrong, or are they not aware? Like the coward's punch or the king hit is typically when you don't see it coming, when someone runs in from behind. That's what it is. None of those would have been a part of this legislation. So what the media is showing you to reinforce this story is not what the legislation is going to rule on, which just goes to show how difficult it is. The editors didn't know. Editors at TV3 didn't know what one was because they put the wrong footage in there.
A recent case, promising MMA fighter Falbake died here after being punched in 2021 on Auckland's Simon Street. The man who threw that punch, Daniel Harvey, received a sentence of 2 years and 9 months.
For the victims like Foe, his family, and for other victims, this will certainly act as a little bit of solace that at least
yeah, my son died on Simon Street, but at least the next person is going to get an extra 2 years. That makes me feel so much better. This is just lunacy. It's a ridiculous talking point.
Out of those deaths, there has been some movement.
Falbake's trainer, Mike Angove, is on the board of the Walk Without Fear charitable trust. He says education and legislation is the way to go.
But if you don't have a serious deterrent in terms of your sentencing, then there's no real disincentive to change your behaviour.
So, Chewy, following that theory, we should make it the death penalty, because if people are going to change their behaviour based on the sentence, then make the sentence as severe as possible. Then everyone will be angels. It's just mind-numbingly stupid. Mind-numbingly.
I think that the fundamental thing that all of these people are missing is the guys that are throwing these punches aren't writing up a pro and cons list before they do it.
Yeah.
They all think they're going to get away with it.
Yep.
And they're not aware of what the sentence is. It's not a deterrent.
And they're drunk in Simon Street at 2 a.m. Yeah.
It's not like this. I understand, that the government wants to seem that they're tough on crime and the only thing that they have in the bag is to increase sentencing because they haven't been able to get more police to be out actually on the streets stopping these things before they happen.
Yeah.
That's the deterrent, is I can't smack this guy in the face because I literally saw a cop 2 doors up walking the beat on a Saturday night. That's the deterrent. Thinking that you will get immediately pinched for it.
And Chewy, this government's in control of that because they promised us 500 cops by the end of this year, and in their first 20 months, they got like 30 brand new ones. So they're onto it. They've got it sorted out. How about this, Mr. Luxon? How about you pay your cops? And I'm not necessarily saying this is just me calling out the bullshit. How about you pay your cops $200K a year? Then you'll see if you've got a shortfall at the end of every year. How about you pay your nurses $200K a year? See if you've got a shortfall after that. How about you pay your doctors $500K a year? You know, what about all that money that's going to landlords and tax rebates, refunds? How about you put that into the public sector, maybe as Gary Pender would say, somewhere on the front line, and then see if you've still got staff shortages. I suspect you wouldn't have anywhere near as much if you drove all that money, all that $19 billion into nurses, doctors, police officers, armed services if you want to. There'd be no shortages.
I see we've dragged in a bunch of crunchies on this one, actually.
Wee! Welcome.
So, go cry woke lefties. Cool. Thanks for your input. Look, nobody's in the corner of these people throwing these punches.
Of course not.
Like I've been, like I would say that I've been coward punched in Cuba Street when I was up in Wellington by a fucking drunk teenager, high out of his mind. I said something he didn't like. He ran up behind me, hit me in the back of the head. You know, it happens. But for these politicians to sit there and go, oh, we want to create a deterrent. It's not a deterrent. I 100% guarantee the guy that smacked me in the back of the head wasn't worried about the consequences.
Of course not.
They never are.
Of course not. I mean, this is what the consequences do. The consequences remove that person from society for a period of time. That's all they do. Now, this is leading quite nicely to Tamatha Paul's conversation, because when they're in prison for longer, they then get upskilled in the ways of crime and they come out being better criminals. We'll get onto that next, but let's get to the end of the story.
But prominent lawyer Marie Dyberg KC says the existing legislation works well. It's measured as an aggravating factor in an assault.
If we dispute the facts that make an offence more culpable because of the circumstances, we have that court, and a court decides.
Whoa.
It doesn't make sense.
Not anymore. This is what we were just talking about. The courts don't decide, the government decides. This is my big concern.
None of this legislation makes sense. It's just nonsense.
Dyberg says the legislation is a total waste of time.
There's nothing magical about one punch. It is nonsensical. A fight is a fast-moving, non-static incident. So when is the one punch going to be the cowardly punch?
Bingo.
When you've got a series of punches.
Over the past few days, the government's been announcing it's getting tougher on sentences, also restricting judges from shortening them and targeting those who attack first responders.
They're all practical, common sense things that I think the regular New Zealanders watching this conversation will say that's good stuff.
The consequences will be a fast-growing prison population, but the government argues it's got to put people inside short-term to ensure there's a drop in crime.
Yeah, but so you put them inside short term, the crime drops off, then they come out are more advanced and more connected. I think Tamatha says this in our conversation. It's called the Department of Connections, not the Department of Corrections, because that's what happens inside prison. They get connected, they get fitter, they get stronger, they get upskilled, and they come out onto the streets as better criminals. That's why, whānau, that's why crunchies, that locking them up and throwing away the key for 10 years is maybe not always, and I won't say never, maybe not always the best solution. Surely what we want is the best solution for the victims, the best solution for society, and we actually want what's the best solution for the offender as well. Because if, like what Chewy was saying, the offender was impacted by something else, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drug abuse, whether it's mental health, you know, just putting them inside and throwing away the key just may amplify all of those things that when they come out, they're 10 times worse, which doesn't help society.
It goes against other things that they've said is right. Like they said, gang membership could be an aggravating factor on whatever sentence that they were up. So why can't that just be a thing of an assault charge or a manslaughter charge? That the aggravating feature was that they snuck up behind this guy and fucking bashed him in the back of the head with no provocation. You know, coming up with a whole separate piece of legislation and then saying it's going to do something that it clearly is not going to do is not solving that problem. They want to appear to be seen to be doing something. And I want to be clear, because the crunchies are going, oh, you're just sticking up for criminals. I don't give a fuck about someone that wants to get drunk and fight someone in the street. Fuck them. But if our leaders are sitting here and going, well, we've done this thing that's going to change society dramatically for the better, and it's bullshit, I'm going to call them on it. Now,
So let's do
a lot of the things that this government loves to do, is it's not a new idea that they've organically come up with before. Australia had a law like this when they went through a rash of people getting smacked in the fucking back of the head, hitting concrete and dying. So they thought that they had to jump in and dramatically change that as well. So that's what they did. They brought in a similar piece of legislation, and this window's not working for me.
I I think you
So, yeah.
accept all your cookies, mate. That's what you got to do.
Oh,
Unfortunately.
yeah. Oh, there we go. There it is. Right. Now it's nice and bright. So 10 years ago, the Aussies brought in a law. Single blow to the head or neck, usually without warning, leading to impact from the punch, but also impact to the ground, killing 172 Australians since 2000. Now, this sounds remarkably similar to what they're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It hasn't really worked. We have a specific legislation for these exact type of assaults in most Australian states, but the majority of these coward punch assaults aren't being charged or convicted under this legislation. We see relatively low utilisation of the laws designed for this purpose. Now, why would that happen? Because police and the Crown will prosecute what they can prove and what will get these people. So it doesn't matter if they have assault or coward punch assault and that sort of thing. They look there and go, well, can we prove that this meets the coward punch thing, or do we have a chance of losing that conviction?
Right.
So they go for the sure thing, which absolutely makes sense. But it shows that doing a separate piece of legislation, A, there's no mention of its deterrent effect. It's not getting used in the courts. They have 10 years worth of data from a society that's reasonably similar to ours, that it's not working as intended. But that's not the problem they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
They're not really concerned about that.
Any of the crunchies in our chat right now, or if you're watching this and on-demand crunch, you're an on-demand crunchy, you just need to ask yourself this question. Do I want legislation and the courts and the justice system to make society function as well as it can? I would hope that everybody's answer to that is yes. And then do your research. The current system is not doing that. A new system needs to be found. Now, I think a lot of people don't like this because they think tree hugger, airy fairy, treating these criminals with kid gloves. Like, and I'm not saying that this is what anyone is suggesting, so I'll just use those words on my hypothetical, pushback from a crunchy. If using kid gloves led to a better outcome for everyone and society, wouldn't that be the best thing for us to do? And that's what we're in the process of doing. The lock them up and throw away the key, or the 3 strikes in the max, or the saying we're going to be tough on crime, but then the courts are going for lesser charges like what Chewy said because they want a conviction. None of that stuff's working. Even Bill English, and I talk about this, I forget where I cut in with Tamatha. Even Bill English, when he became Prime Minister after Sir John of Key left Parliament, even Bill English talked about prison as the university of crime. It's like, we know this. This is not new ground we're traversing. We need to do something different. So let me put it this way, right? We need to do something different. We've got to try something different. Let's try this. If it doesn't work, let's try something else. If that doesn't work, let's try something else. Because locking them up and throwing away the key, or locking them up for sustained periods with no rehabilitation, no nothing, that one we already know statistically for decades is not working. I want to move on to the next one though, Joey, because we've got, actually the thing is I want to keep moving because we've got quite a bit to get through and I want to get through it all, not be here till 1 a.m. Sir Christopher of Luxon is still with us, and he is talking about the first responders, violence towards first responders. And the question that's asked, which is the most obvious question, that if you're going to bring in this legislation, what's it going to do? How is this going to stop offending?
As a former frontline police officer,
Yeah, so Jenny May was a frontline cop. So she's great to have this conversation with.
I get the fear and I get the anxiety around that. My question is, though, how do we know that increasing or having harsher penalties will actually stop our frontline from being assaulted?
Well, I just think we've got a moral responsibility to do what we can to make sure we are protecting them. And so, the reality is we're seeing that increasing trend. We hope that this is actually a real deterrent that stops people from doing it. There are some pretty serious consequences, 3, 5.
I just need the government to show us any research that says deterrents are the thing that leads to less offending. I know that when I used to work on radio, this conversation would come up all the time, and I would say to them, that therefore means the states in America that have the death penalty should be the safest states, right? Because if the deterrent is the thing that stops offending, And I haven't done this for 15 years. I'm pretty confident saying it would be similar, if not the same. All of the states with the death penalty, worse crime stats. So the deterrent did not stop the crime. Show me some research where it says it does before you spout off this bullshit again that someone in the middle of a rage or alcohol or a mental health situation or whatever it is going to go, oh, actually, no, fellow chappie, we should stop doing this because I may go to jail for 2 years longer if I hit you in the head, you fall back and crack your head. It's fantasy land stuff. It's fairy tale stuff.
5 and 7 year sentencing based on depending on what the assault looks like. But I think it's just entirely appropriate. I think these are people who have chosen a career that actually is pretty awesome, and we need to esteem them. We need to value them, and we don't treat.
Why don't you fucking pay them better then? You want to value them and esteem them? Why don't you fucking pay them a bit better and keep them in our country?
Them poorly like this, and we need to protect them. So, it's just coming from that. I think any Kiwi watching this would say, look, that seems about right. That's entirely appropriate. We don't want those people getting bashed.
This is the second iteration of this bill, right?
We don't want those people getting bashed. So he's actively saying they will stop getting bashed if we introduce this. Horse shit. I call bullshit, Mr. Prime Minister. And this is why this is a talking point headline. Government stops first responders getting bashed. What do the stats say? Oh, they hasn't really changed at all. But the headline after today and this interview is government wants to stop first responders getting bashed. It's a headline. It's a legislation that doesn't need to be introduced and won't be implemented. Can't be implemented.
New Zealand First bill was voted down back in 2020. And the critics of that original bill argued that harsher penalties they don't actually deter people from assaulting police or frontline people, and actually because it's being done by people who are in crisis at that time, right?
Of course.
And so the argument has always been...
Or let's not use the flowery word of crisis, or they're pissed, or they're high, or they're in a rage because their wife just left them, whatever. Lots of other reasons where you cannot be thinking straight.
That actually there needs to be some preventative measures that are put in there. So access to mental health services, drug addiction services, all of those sorts of things, because ultimately we don't want them being assaulted in the first place. This is kind of a after the fact.
Yeah, but this is just one of many things that we're doing. We're also making sure we're getting proper mental health support for call-outs so that police aren't carrying the can.
You?
Hang on.
Are you?
Hang on. Some people call that defunding the police, Chewy. Are you aware of this? Getting proper mental health care out. In America, they call that defunding the police. That finances from the police would get directed to proper mental health care. Are you defunding the police, Mr. Luxon? Is that what you're talking about right now? I thought only bad people talked about defunding the police. That sounds like that's what you're talking about, because that's what defunding the police was sending out mental health callers with police to handle the situation differently. Ah, interesting.
When most of their, a lot of their calls have been for mental health issues. We actually want the mental health professionals to be there, when people are really experiencing crisis. But I just don't think there's any excuse for why you shouldn't do this. I mean, I honestly don't.
So we're going to keep going with the story, but I just wanted to pause for a second because the last part of this conversation, and it's only 60 seconds, is infuriating. Because what you hear Mr. Luxon say at least twice in this is, I don't care. I don't care. What if this doesn't work? I don't care. What does the research say about this? I don't care. We're just going to do it. You couldn't be more blatant with your, actually, the outcomes don't matter that much. It makes a good hairline. I don't care. Yes, Joey.
Is it just that, or does he sneak in a I won't apologise?
Well, I'm not sure if he sneaks that in.
Because that's his other favourite one. This is his other favourite word crutch when he's talking about law and order stuff. I won't apologise for being tough on crime.
Yeah.
Nobody's asking you to apologise. People are asking, is this going to work? Because the research says it doesn't. Well, I don't care and I won't apologise.
Right, well, let's see.
Will we see that?
He definitely says I won't care. I haven't taken down notes on I won't
apologise.
Let's see
get
if you're
your
right.
bets in, chat.
Hang on.
Get your bets in.
Get your drinks ready to consume if he says it.
The thing is, though, the Crimes Act already has or covers intentional harm. Penalties are between 5 and 14 years. So why do we need to make these changes?
I want it to be really explicit. I don't care. I want our police officers. I want our paramedics. I want our...
It's already there. I don't care that it's already there. I'm going to put it. I'm going to bold it. I'm going to highlight that it's there. I don't care.
Firefighters, I want our prison officers to feel safe, and I actually want to make sure we've done everything we possibly can to do so. So if the messages is going
That's interesting, eh?
He's lumped them in with first responders.
A bit of argy-bargy in a prison could therefore keep those prisoners in for longer. The prisoners that they want to keep in private prisons for longer to earn private prison providers more money. You like that one?
Yeah, I have some thoughts. Let's finish this. I have some thoughts about the term first responder.
All right, and we'll finish this.
going to be a serious consequences for bashing a first responder, then actually, I'm sorry, we're doing it. We've also, you're right, we've got to do a lot of other things as well to make sure that we're putting more police out on the beat. We're making sure we are getting those mental health supports there. There's a lot more work for us to do in mental health in general, but there just needs to be zero tolerance for it. I mean, I'm sorry, but we have rights and responsibilities, and when a fellow citizen is there to try and help you, they don't deserve to get bashed or assaulted in any way.
But harsher penalties, is it a deterrent?
Might well be, and I don't care. I want it done because I want those people protected.
But you don't know that.
I'm telling you, I'm just saying to you, we want them protected. I don't think anyone watching this interview would say to me, you can't seriously not have, you know, tougher consequences for someone assaulting a paramedic trying to help you from St. John.
So is this going to work, Chewy? His response, I don't care.
Don't care. Don't care. I'm just doing this. It doesn't matter. I'm decisive. I'm going to change this, whether it changes things or not. Look, I want to talk about the fact that he's talking about first responders. Paramedics deal with a whole lot of stuff. They see people at their absolute fucking worst.
Yeah,
they're dealing with someone that's having psychosis, a mental health break, maybe it's drug induced, all of that sort of stuff. It's happening late at night. People aren't in their right head and they'll fucking lash out. Now, I am concerned about someone in that state then copping a charge because they're flailing around. I want to know what that vulnerable person, how they're protected from this legislation going forward. I want paramedics to be safe. Like, if someone was doing their job trying to save someone and an unrelated person came in and fucking smacked them in the back of the head, absolutely. Throw them down a deep, dark hole. That's fine. But my concern is here, the other first of all, who's assaulting a fireman? Like, I know firemen have had shit thrown at them. They've turned the hoses on them, that sort of thing. I think this is very specifically, think about the first responders that are coming into the most conflict when they turn up to the site, and it is the police. Now, they already have a charge for resisting arrest and assault and all of this sort of stuff, and it just feels like this is something that is going to get chucked on top.
Yeah.
And again, it is people that are not in their right mind. It is not... It is not going to be something that they stop and think about in a moment of crisis, in a moment of aggravation, in a moment of inebriation or drugs or all of the other things. It is not going to be part of their thought process. So it is not a deterrent, and it is not going to stop these assaults from happening. So the point there is, how is it making these people safer?
And let me let me ask this. You brought it up. I want to move on to Tamatha next, so we'll just in a few minutes or less if we can do this. A first responder innately and in and of itself responds to the public, the first people there. Who does a prison officer respond to as a first responder? He's putting, like you said, he's putting prison officers in there. Now that means if they're going to have the same ability to have an offender be charged with 2 extra years because these first offenders have been assaulted, that to me just seems like a way that you can keep people in prison for longer. Oh, we can slap another 2 years onto that now because you were flailing, because of whatever reason. But I want to know, who are they responding to, these first responders?
Yeah. Prison officers are not first responders.
No.
I mean, nobody deserves to be assaulted at work, but prison officers, I think that is part of the job description. They should have the tools and the processes to protect them.
Yeah,
the other quick thing The other quick thing, and I know when you want to get on to Tamatha, so I'm just going to say the one thing, because I read this story the other day. I don't have the link to hand, but it was a study of what has the biggest single impact on people that are more likely to have these interactions with first responders, that they have violent or troubled upbringings, or they're going down a path. They're mainly looking at youth offenders and that sort of thing. Do you know what it was? Do you know what had the biggest effect?
What?
Stable housing. It was stable housing, because that is where it all starts. Knowing that you have your own place, that you have somewhere to build from. But that's too hard, because market forces and portfolios, and we can't be nice to poor people because they don't deserve it, because otherwise why are they poor?
Yep. All right. We're going to have this is a pre-recorded conversation from this afternoon with Tamatha Paul. I want to remind you as well, unfortunately, we lost some of the audio. You'll actually hear there is an edit towards the end of this. And at the end, she starts to break up a little bit, but I've left a little bit of the crappy audio in to get to the last point. And then just trust me, the 5 or 6 minutes after that, you wouldn't have been able to hear Tamatha. So we haven't been able to do a full interview, unfortunately. But this is talking about how the justice system, the court system, should be independent from the government. Why is the government telling judges what sentences they can pass on? Surely there needs to be a line of demarcation between legislative government and judicial courts. And one should not be telling the other one what to do. That feels like something you'd see in an authoritarian country, and something not particularly democratic. So let's have a listen to this, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. And it's a big welcome to the show, Tamatha Paul. Tamatha is the police and courts spokesperson, also the youth justice spokesperson. So it kind of fits pretty well in this whole conversation around sentencing and courts and what the government's telling the judiciary to do. So, Tam, thanks for joining us this evening.
Oh, good. Lots to get into today.
Oh, mate, it's going to be one of those shows, I think. One of those weeks, one of those years, maybe.
One of those
now,
terms.
we want to talk about this idea for heavier sentencing for people who commit violent acts against first offenders. But if you're okay, I want to start in a slightly different place. And it kind of comes back to the impartiality of the judiciary. This was the Prime Minister this morning with Mr. Bridge, Ryan Bridge. Just have a listen to what's said here. And I actually think this has been kind of skipped by a lot of the media, because this is just how you introduce it. But I actually think there's a really important point that people are missing. So have a listen to this.
We'll start with law and order, because you've got a bunch of announcements coming out this week, stuff we've already had. Is your big problem here actually getting the courts to do what you guys are telling them to do? I mean, we've sort of seen this with first responders. It's been legislated before that they're to be taken care of when it comes to sentencing, but, you know, do the courts really pay it much attention?
Well, there's sort of three things we've been trying to do. One is we've got to get tough on gangs for violent crime. We've got to get, sort out serious young offending, get rid of the ram raids, which has been going on. And the third bit is making sure we've got some serious consequences for some serious crimes. So, yes, we are mandating that through legislation, because we want to be crystal clear about the expectations. Today, tomorrow, actually, our new legislation comes in where we're limiting what judges can discount sentences by, based on you can't have multiple reasons for remorse, all that kind of stuff.
But will they just increase the discounts on other things? You know what I mean?
We've got the gist, because, I mean, people don't realise we've got the gist, because let me just explain it out. Ryan Bridge says, is this about how you're going to get the courts to do what you want them to do? I mean, I don't want to sort of be overly dramatic, but that sounds very authoritarian. So tell me if I'm wrong, right? You're the MP, you're in this world, but it feels like you've got a government instructing the courts what to do. Now, that means there's no judicial impartiality. The way I thought it worked was the government makes the legislation, the courts interpret how that's to be applied. And if these guys are saying, and like I said, I want to talk about the first responders, but if these guys are saying, you must now sentence the way we decide, the precedence that sets is that when you loopy lefties get in, you're going to tell the courts, I'm being silly, but to instruct them to do it in a different way. Aren't we supposed to have impartiality with that judicial? Shouldn't that be outside of what the government can instruct them to do? And what am I missing?
Yeah, well, the first point you made about the separation of powers, our government intentionally separates those who create the laws and those who enforce the laws through our courts. That those are separated for a reason to keep to try and make the system fair. And the reason that there's been all of these bills that the government has been doing, like the first responders bill or like the coward punch bill, is because we have a government and government parties that are unhappy that judges are using imprisonment as a tool of punishment. They're using it less and less. And the reason that they're using it less is because they are seeing the same people cycling through our court system, because when they go to prison, they're not being rehabilitated, they're not changing their actions, they're not changing their attitudes, and therefore the same things are happening over and over again. So they have realized, which a lot of researchers and people have been saying for a long time, that prisons don't work. They don't change people's behaviors, they don't change people's attitudes, and therefore judges are looking for actual effective evidence-based ways to change people's behavior. And so that upsets our government, because our government's idea of a justice system is based on revenge and retribution, right? They want to punish people by putting them into prison and subjecting them to terrible conditions. Whereas I guess people in the Greens or people in Labour or on the left want a justice system based on rehabilitation, actually changing the underlying drivers of why people commit crime in the first place. So you can make lots of different things crimes, whether that's assaulting a first responder, whether that's the nature by which you assault people, whether that's, any of those factors. But if the result of those are simply longer terms of imprisonment, it's not actually going to get at the nature of those crimes or the nature of those events and solve or change the attitudes that underlie, or the factors that underlie that behavior, so they don't work. It's also really interesting that they're doing all of this right now, because last week the New Zealand Law Society put out a report called Strengthening the Rule of Law in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And this is a report that is created by members of the Law Society who might be lawyers, judges, people who are in the legal world. And one of the big things that they're worried about is the lack of judicial independence that has come about because of these kinds of policies.
Like I said, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, but it sounds very Putin-y. Putin-y will tell the courts what to do. I know that's too far, but it's on that pathway. I mean, in like 10, 15 years ago, when Bill English became Prime Minister for about 3 minutes, he called prison the University of Crime.
Yeah,
So,
totally. It's the Ministry of Connections, not the Ministry of Corrections. Like, let's be real. That's what people are doing there. There are drugs in prisons. They are able to strengthen their connections and become more fit, more active, and better connected. So if that's what people want, then keep sending them to jail.
And what I hear you saying, like if we take a step back and look at the two options, what I hear you saying is you guys want the best outcome for everyone, society, the victim, and the offender, and the right want to put people behind bars for a period of time and fuck them. And then what they're getting is when they come out of prison, as you say, they've made more connections. So their system's not working.
No, never has. Because if police and prisons worked, then we'd live in a completely safe society right now. But in New Zealand, I've found that we're unwilling to address the true drivers of crime. And when I think about incidences like coward punches, alcohol almost always plays a role in these kinds of events. But are we talking about alcohol harm and reducing the access to alcohol? No, we're having a conversation about longer term imprisonments. So it is hard. But this whole playbook also reminds me of American politics, because I saw a video again just last week of Donald Trump talking about unelected judges and just that kind of rhetoric around unelected judges and this idea that because judges aren't elected, they're not democratic and don't have the best interests of the public in mind, which is untrue. But it's and it was that rhetoric came up a lot during the Treaty Principles Bill as well. This idea of unelected judges, and it's basically just to sow seeds of distrust with our judges and our judicial system, so that those processes and systems can be hijacked by politicians.
So just before we go into the specific conversation around the new legislation they want to pass around attacks on first offenders, what is this a warning bell about the government directing the courts as to what to do? Should we be worried? What needs to happen about that?
Yeah, this is just part of their approach to managing, almost micromanaging what tools they have available. And the reason that it's a problem is because first, it flies in the face of evidence and the reasons why judges are using imprisonment less and less as a tool, because it's not effective and it doesn't rehabilitate people or change behaviors. But it also is creating an environment whereby lots of decisions that judges will make will be challenged and judicially reviewed because they are being made based on these kind of arbitrary rules that the government is making, as opposed to the logic that they would traditionally use. So it's going to backlog the courts even further and reduce people's ability to access justice through the courts, because judges will be caught up in all of these reviews based on their decisions when you remove things like sentencing discounts and when you put in place these rigid rules. Because you've got to look at this in the context of the last 18 months of having this government. 3 strikes have been brought back. Sentencing law reforms have limited judges' abilities to confer sentencing discounts and to consider things like somebody's age. So they've removed considering people's youth and also considering if people are remorseful for their actions. And this just kind of adds to that. The response to these kinds of awful things happening, like our first responders being safe in their jobs, can't just be, oh, well, after it happens, we'll just make the punishment more severe. We have to stop it happening in the first place.
Yeah, let's look at that. So this is the new legislation coming out talking about harsher penalties on first offenders, first responders if they suffer attacks. Just share your thoughts on that first of all before we go any deeper.
First of all, I think it's really important that the first responders are safe in their job. Everybody deserves to be safe. Nobody deserves to be assaulted in their workplace. That's period. But this bill is based on the assumption that if somebody were to attack a first responder, they would even weigh up, if I attack this person, I'll get 3 years. And if I attack this person who happens to be a paramedic or a police officer or a prison officer, then I'm going to get 5 years. Therefore, I'm not going to do that. I'll attack this person instead. When it comes to crime and people breaking the law, really often people don't consider what differences there are in sentencing when it comes to different types of acts because they simply don't know. I think most members of parliament wouldn't know what time and what terms of imprisonment match different levels of crime, whether that's murder, manslaughter, whatever, assault, aggravated robbery, burglary, all of these things. Most people don't understand the complexities around sentencing in terms of imprisonment. So it relies on that assumption that people think that there will be a bigger punishment, which people don't know because people don't think that they'll get caught for crime. But when we're thinking about first responders and people lashing out, you can kind of imagine the sort of person who would lash out at somebody that's trying to help them, and that would be someone who is deeply mentally unwell.
Or they're in the moment they have impaired themselves with drugs or alcohol, so they're not thinking squarely or not seeing it squarely. Yeah,
exactly. And so it's important that we take that context into consideration, because if you have someone who is severely mentally unwell to the point where they are abusing or assaulting the people that are trying to help them, that shows you what kind of state of mind they're in. They don't need a prison cell. They need intense care support through our health system. And so, you know, matching that with longer jail sentences and longer terms of imprisonment is not going to keep people safer. But there are a number of other ways to keep people safer and make their working conditions better so that they are not in dangerous situations as well. But I know that the government is not interested in those more proactive, preventative ways of keeping our community safe.
There you go. So if you missed that, but as you saw, how that last 10, 15 seconds was, that was the rest of the interview. That's why we didn't play the rest of the interview. But she said the way to do it, in case you guys missed it, was to fix the workplaces. But the government's not interested in doing that. Obviously, fixing the workplaces of the first responders. And I noticed in there a few times I did say first offenders. Must have been on my mind instead of first responders, but we got there. Well, there you go, Chewie. We've got more to talk about tonight, but you can, if you want to share your thoughts on what you've just heard before we move on.
Yeah, look, I think what this boils down to is the solutions to these problems are difficult and complex and interlocking, and this government is incapable of that level of thought, of that level of planning, and of that level of intelligence to start unpicking this problem. Tamatha actually said something that was right on the tip of my tongue through a lot of that, was that there is one thing in common with all of these coward punch interactions, and that is alcohol.
Yeah. But
we won't touch that because it's difficult. People love a drink, and you know, anytime someone looks at that, like say a blunt instrument by going, police see more violence offences when the pubs close at say 5, so we're going to change it now, and the pubs will close at 1, or a one-way door policy or something like that. And all that does is that just moves that problem to that different time period. And it's just none of them are thinking of other solutions to that. They're very surface level thinking that the only tool that we have in our tool bag is stopping judges from considering the facts of the case and just locking them into a pathway, which is put this person in jail for longer. We've tried that before. Other countries, other societies similar to ours have tried the same things before, and it has never worked. When you're talking about the prevention, if you're putting one person in jail for longer, all you are preventing is that one person from doing that more. And that might be a small benefit, but it doesn't mean you get a fully functioning person when they come out. It doesn't stop somebody else from doing a very similar thing, because it is an action of passion or inebriation or mental crisis or all of these things. Doing a legislation that they don't care. They didn't watch Winston Peters saying that it was going to fix all of it. It's fucking not it. They don't get it.
All right, we're going to keep trucking. Mata says a lot of teenagers are going to get caught up in this. Yep, I think that's probably fair. We're danger of mouse. When I was going in for a hongi and got head-butted, was that a thing or just an error in judgment?
I think that's bad spatial awareness.
But I think the point being made is, what about when there's a line to decide, is this or isn't it? Who gets to decide it was a king hit versus a garden variety assault? Neither of which is okay. But when it's on that line, then what? Because it seems like this government is going to be telling the courts what to do. The private prisons need the prisoners for profit, says Kiwi Bird. What about this one? Prime Minister, do you know you have responsibility to help the most vulnerable in New Zealand, right? Yeah, I think that's very true. And another one here from, the names are all different, you see. Carachella. Late fee. Thank you for your late fee. All right, so here's, there was a story. I'm gonna give you the headline, and then we're going to play a little video. And I'm hoping we can pick up on this later on, because Juliet Moses, I hope she's watching. I'm sure she watches all of our shows. She's been very quiet about this recently. Annie O'Brien, Dane Gerard, all been very quiet about this. Somebody needs to ask them why leaders in Israel are asking the IDF soldiers to shoot deliberately unarmed Gazans. It's a killing field, is the quote. IDF soldiers ordered to shoot deliberately at unarmed Gazans waiting for humanitarian aid. IDF officers and soldiers told Haaretz, which is the newspaper, they were ordered to fire at unarmed crowds near food distribution sites in Gaza, even when no threat was present. Hundreds of Palestinians have been killed, prompting the military prosecution to call for a review into possible war crimes. And then the first paragraph just says this. Israeli soldiers in Gaza told Haaretz that the army has deliberately fired at Palestinians near aid distribution sites over the past month. Conversations with officers and soldiers reveal that commanders ordered troops to shoot at crowds, to drive them away or disperse them, even though it was clear they posed no threat. One soldier described the situation as a total breakdown of Israel Defense Forces ethical codes in Gaza. That sounds like an oxymoron. According to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza, 549 people have been killed near aid centres and in areas where residents were waiting for UN food trucks since May 27th. Over 4,000 have been wounded, but the exact number of those killed or injured by IDF fire remains unclear. So all the people who are saying, I mean, for people still to say Israel has the right to defend itself today, 2 years later, when is defense turning into genocide? I think we know the answer to that question, but if you're still using that Israel has the right to defend itself, you need to ask yourself that question. But I understand there's a bit of pushback coming from some quarters that are now trying to blame Hamas for firing upon the people who are waiting at food.
Right.
Except, of course, the people know where the shots are coming from. And they're coming from where the Israeli defense. I don't think Hamas has snuck into the IDF forfeits and gone shooting at them anyway. It's coming from that side. Here's about 90 seconds from Al Jazeera, a report on that story.
Israeli soldiers have reportedly admitted they've been ordered to deliberately shoot people near food distribution centers in Gaza. The Haaretz newspaper reports some soldiers told it they'd been instructed to shoot them at aid sites run by Israeli forces and US-backed GHF. The head of UNRWA described the GHF as an abomination and a death trap. While
the GHF is a American evangelical-backed, quote-unquote, charity, who the leader of that is very good friends with Donald Trump. And they are the ones who are supplying the food at the locations that the IDF is now shooting at. Now, I'm not going to draw the connection between Trump, American evangelicals, and the actions of the IDF, but some may think that, there's a bit of a honey trap if ever I've seen one. I think it's too long a bow, but to say now that the group that is providing this food is backed by evangelical Americans and run by a good friend of Trump's, at those sites, the IDF are shooting and killing unarmed people, almost feels too surreal for words, Chewy, that those connections are all there and why they would be there.
I'm just looking at the Wikipedia article. Look, if 500 Palestinians have died at your aid stations, you're not being a very good aid station. 4,000 wounded.
Yeah.
Like, the only reason that people are after the first one, second one, third time it happens, right? The only reason that people are coming back to that aid station is because of how desperate their situation is.
100%.
These people have been marched from one end of the Gaza Strip to the other constantly for near 3 years. Anytime they stop to rest, the refugee camps get bombed. They line up for aid. It is not enough. There's too many people going for it there. and you've got Israelis on either side that might just decide to fucking open up on you with machine guns, sniper fire, rifles, drones, and tanks.
Well,
That's like,
hey, the thing is as well, now you can get the full circle, right? For weeks it's been reported that children have been turning up to Gaza hospital with sniper bullet wounds to the head. This makes logical sense. You know? So the things that are coming together, the gunshots are coming from where the IDF is. This is making sense. So all the things that have been reported previously that are people like, no, they all tie up into a nice, neat ball of evidence now to go, this is absolutely happening. There is no way around this happening.
Pat, sorry, I just forgot. I forgot. We're getting outraged about this when we should be getting outraged about something else.
Oh, the
An
hostages?
artist at Glastonbury started up a chant that said "Death, death to the IDF."
Oh,
you know, the people that are doing this, we should be angry and upset about that. That's more offensive. That's like visceral, you know, that feeling of rage. That's actually because of what an artist said at Glastonbury, not because of this story that we're talking about, which is a black stain on everybody that says that they're part of the international rules-based order that has let this happen for near on 3 years. The right time to stop this would have been fucking immediately.
Yeah.
But every day, every week, every month, every year that the developed world has let this go on. The moment that the US has vetoed every UN action to fucking stop this is a stain on all of us. And here in New Zealand, our weak leaders have just been wringing their hands and occasionally making a statement. Like, I thought about this today, right? What would happen? What would happen if our jellyfish of a prime minister suddenly grew a spine made of fucking titanium and just went, you know what? I can't keep watching stories about this. I'm going to fucking YOLO our defense forces into the Mediterranean with a ship full of aid because I'm sick of seeing it. Let the Israelis take a pot shot. What's stopping any country doing that?
Yeah. Well, listen, let's get into this story. It's a terrible story. I am chasing some interviews about it, which is why we're just kind of talking about it briefly tonight. The other thing to mention as well, we're not going to show it, but in the article, it talks about one of the ways the leaders, I think, of the IDF have been communicating or ordering the soldiers to shoot, as they've said, and I think they've used the word communicate. They need to communicate with the Gazans with live bullets. So let's get into this bit.
Said the militarization of humanitarian assistance in Gaza amounts to a war crime. Doctors Without Borders called for the aid scheme to be halted, describing it as slaughter, masquerading as humanitarian aid. Despite those,
if Doctors with Borders is not on your humanitarian side, there's something with your side.
Israeli media reports Israel's largest benefactor, the United States, announced an additional $30 million worth of military assistance for the organization, saying this.
We call on other countries to also support the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, in its critical work. A track record of distributing over 46 million meals distributed to date.
Do you think he'll talk about the track record of the number of people who have been shot and killed? I don't know if he'll talk about that track record, though.
All while preventing Hamas, looting is absolutely incredible and should be commended and supported. From day one, we said we are open to creative solutions that securely provide aid to those in Gaza and protects Israel. This support is simply the latest iteration of President Trump's and Secretary Rubio's pursuit of peace in the region.
But Palestinians in Gaza say the reality is they're facing what feels like Hunger Games, being attacked, starved, and shot at just for trying to feed themselves and their hungry children. Seymour bin Javed, Al Jazeera.
Chewy. Thoughts before we go into our last piece for the night.
2 words. Motherfuckers. So I've just been reading up on GHF. They've received $500 million in funding, and apparently have distributed maybe $7 million. Well, their operation has expenses of about $7 million. $7 million. $7 million is a much smaller number than $500 million.
Yeah, much more.
So it's not about aid. Somebody's making bank out of a genocide. That's fucked. That's just so fucked. The stuff makes me just feel completely just impotent.
Fold under pressure, eh? There's like, what can you do? Can't do much of anything at all. So, I don't know whether this is going to be finishing on a good news story or not. I suspect some people it won't be, but
I have a good news story to wrap up.
When we see people that live in that world of supporting some of the stuff on the right have their, what did you say the other day? Are worn like a hat. Is that what you said? Wore her like a hat. It can be something that is worth watching for voyeurism, if no other reason. So this is this thing called Surrounded, right? Candace Owens was on Surrounded, and she made a claim. The claim was, no career will give women as much joy and fulfillment as raising children. And she spent a long time talking about, being in the house, not being in the home, yada, yada, yada. And one particular contributor to this conversation started pointing out that Candace Owens is not in the home with her children. In fact, she's traveling the world speaking and hiring nannies and babysitters to look after her children. So surely, even if she's happy now, according to Candace Owens would be much happier if she was raising her children. She tries to get around that and sideways and that by saying she works from home and she has no boss and yada, yada, yada. But the reality is, apparently, Candace Owens thinks Candace Owens would be happier if she wasn't working whilst she is there working. I'm going to play two short parts of this this conversation with this one contributor. The first is where the contributor sets up the points to the conversation that she's about to knock down.
All right. Jasmine, nice to meet you. Okay, so you say that women are more fulfilled at home with kids than going out into the workforce or getting educated, but that just really doesn't bear out when you look at the stats, when you look at how working mothers are way less likely to be in poverty. Maternal education is the #1 predictor of childhood outcomes, better scores, getting higher incomes in the future, fewer behavioral problems, better mental health. So it's weird to me and college-educated women are least likely to get divorced, and they're the only women, the top 10% of women are the only women whose marriage rates are going up. So they're getting married, they're staying married, and their kids are doing better. When you look at stay-at-home mothers, you see...
So fire so far, setting up the argument pretty well. The response from Candace Owens, we don't watch much of it, is, well, we're reading different facts then. That's pretty much the only response.
See that they're more likely to report being depressed, they're more likely to report having anxiety and anger and all these types of things. So how can you say that? Seems like a woman, if you want to get married and have kids, you should go to college and have a career.
So it sounds to me like we are looking at totally different statistics, because everything that you said, I've actually read the exact opposite.
I'm glad we're on a fact check show with you.
Right, exactly.
Oh, it's so exciting.
That's going to be amazing. Okay, because I know.
So that's part one. So as you would have seen that when the contributor added her own thoughts in there, the fact check popped up. Now I'm going to play the last 90 seconds of it, and I think most of you will enjoy, if nothing else, watching Candace meltdown. Candace spends more time during this 2 minutes telling the person she's up against there that she's not letting her answer than actually answering. And then there is a chef's kiss for everyone right at the end, when this contributor we're looking at right now spins the whole dial around and asks Candace to follow her own advice and go away from public life and live quietly with her children.
But tell me how the women who are working and getting educated, why are they faring off better in all of these?
I am telling you that I do not believe they are faring off better in all of these measures.
Because of what?
I am telling you that we are looking at totally opposite statistics. So you're sitting here telling me that the statistics show that women who are working are producing better children. But I am saying that women that grow up in a two-family home where the mother stays at home are faring off better than the children who are being raised in an environment
where the women are working?
Where both of the parents are
working. Why don't
taken
you
away
stay
from the
home.
home. I do get to work from home.
No, but
that's the irony.
I
That's why
watched your
said
show.
I'm
You talk about all the
actually-
nannies you hire, and it's so
I
hard to find a good
never
nanny.
talked about all of the nannies I hire, but
you have.
I spoke about how difficult it was to find a babysitter who knew how to cook a meal, and that's because who
you
knew how
don't
to
need
make,
a babysitter. You're already. You could retire right
you have
now.
to let people respond to you when they're speaking.
You don't want to.
to respond to you when
no,
I
you
speak?
don't want to. You want to be working, which is great.
You're telling me what I want now and then accusing me of telling you.
Wait,
what
you don't want to work?
Can you just let me finish? Because you've said so many words that what you're trying to do here, like your argument style, is I'm going to say so much and not let her get a word in and then walk away and feel like I've won. We're not having a conversation because you've not letting me respond to even one of your points.
Go for it.
Okay. What I am saying to you, first to answer what you just said, which was a lie, what I spoke to you about on the weekends is that it's been increasingly difficult to find a 25-year-old who even knows how to make boxed macaroni and cheese, right? And that's crazy. That is in large part due to feminism. Women don't even focus. Women don't even focus. Like there's this idea that women.
So students don't know how to cook macaroni because feminism. That was the literal point she just made.
Shouldn't be cooking. Like there's something fundamentally wrong with women even learning how to cook.
Are you
know what I mean?
spending as much time with your children as you possibly can? Because that's the way to get the most fulfillment.
No, and that's what I'm trying to say. I am speaking to you
So
as.
then stop.
Okay, could you please let somebody get in
I did.
a word
I
edgewise?
let you finish.
You're not.
I
You
did.
actually have not let anybody
I have.
finish.
I
And like I said,
absolutely
it's no one benefits when you're just speaking over me and not allowing me to respond. All you're proving is that you have an attitude.
I would challenge that. We're benefiting right now. I'm just saying we're benefiting as watching.
And you
Okay,
believe
can you
in
address the
feminism,
point now?
but you're not. See, that's what I'm saying. You just have an attitude, and it's not cute. It's performative.
I love if
I'm
you
actually
address my point. I will be quiet if you address my point.
Does anybody actually feel here that I am being allowed to address any of her points when she just keeps running over me?
Yes.
Like I'm literally trying to answer
Everybody
your
said yes.
first point of you saying that I don't stay at home.
Yeah,
Fair
that was
point.
really weird. Yeah.
Fair point. Obviously, I get that you're all anti-Candace and pro-feminist, but also it's not productive if you're not actually.
Okay, address the
responding.
point. You spend more time saying that I'm not addressing, that you don't have a chance to talk. I mean, the whole time you could have addressed the point. And you could have talked.
I
So go for it.
just want you to know that you're not coming across as somebody who wants to actually have a conversation. So to get back to the claim, because I don't even know where you're at. You're now talking. You're saying that I said stuff in my podcast.
I'll go wherever you want to
that
go.
I never said.
I'll go wherever
So do you
want
to start with me working at home? Because I work at home. You just said something about me working
You
at home.
travel all around the world.
Okay,
you do speeches, and I love that. I love how ambitious you are. That's a really great trait. And if you were truly said that, you would be more fulfilled. Now, one thing you do find is women, they don't want to stay at home when you pull them. They just want flexible working hours and flexible working conditions like you have. And I think we should all advocate for that. It's not one or the other. But when you sit here and you go, you'll be more fulfilled doing this, then spend all your time doing that. We would love for you to leave the public eye and go focus on what makes you fulfilled.
Okay.
I know that lots of people sometimes go, "Oh, why feature someone like Candace Owens on your show?" I was like, because that was fun. I enjoyed watching
she just
that.
got dog walked.
She just got dog walked. She is fine.
Look, here's the thing. Maybe just don't put women in a box.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe
Don't make grand sweeping statements like, "Oh, women would be much happier if they had kids." If women want to be happier and stay at home and raise kids, they should do that. If women want to have a fucking career and not raise kids, they should do that. If women want to do some sort of juggling in the middle, we live in a world that they should be able to do that.
Yeah.
Candace, yes, Rajan, 100%. Candace is not very good at this. She thinks she's much smarter than she is.
You know what? I was thinking about skipping that tonight because we've gone a bit long, but I'm glad it's a bit of a palate cleanser at the end that people seem to have a bit of a laugh in the chat. So I'm happy to have delivered that to you.
I think this point is with all of these right-wing grifters that have these talk shows and that sort of thing, that is 100% what Andrew is saying here. Candace is much better. We can speak her nonsense unchallenged. I know that there is someone that is following, is it Charlie Kirk or another one of these right-wing grifters around the US campuses, just going, why don't you debate me?
Well, that happens a lot. There's a guy called Louder with Crowder, Stephen Crowder, who's one of those guys that changed my mind. And there was a setup. There was a setup a couple of years ago where is it Ethan from H3 who's gone a bit cuckoo for Cocoa Pops, whatever that saying is, and that Crowder was going to have a conversation with the H3 team, and Sam Cedar popped up on the So they set it up to put Sam there and Crowder ran. And what happens is they do go and debate 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And if you have the skill of spinning a conversation and not answering their question by asking a question, as a grown-ass man with 20-plus years of broadcasting experience, it's pretty easy to watch someone look pretty foolish. But yeah, they won't debate people who are of substance. They won't debate a Sam Cedar. And you're seeing that a little bit at the moment in the American media ecosystem, the independent media ecosystem, where the guys from TYT, and I know we featured Anna last week for another reason, but most of us are pretty disappointed with where they're at right now. And they'll go on right-wing grifters channels to try and reach out, whilst they smear Emma Vigeland and Sam Cedar from the Majority Report as grifters, and they won't talk to them. So it's like, okay, we see what you're doing here. We see what you're doing.
Hey, I know we're running it pretty long. I'm just going to put 2 stories up to let people know that we're keeping an eye on these sort of things.
Cool.
If you want to draw any lines between them, that is entirely up to you. That is not what I'm doing. I'm just putting up 2 stories.
Okay, there's no connection between these two. You just happen to be putting 2 up.
There is literally no connection that I can find between these 2 stories. I just think they're interesting, just of stories and of timing. Maybe it's something and maybe it's not. Who knows? First story. New Zealand First MP Tanya Unkovic quits Parliament all of a sudden. Deletes all of her social media. If we don't know who Tanya is, she is dreadful. She's anti-trans.
She's Queen tinfoil hat wearer.
Anti-Jacinda, anti-vaccines, absolute cooker. But has made a short statement saying that she's out, that she can serve the country better in the private sector, deleted all of her social media apart from a couple of her personals, and is just gone. Just gone.
Something's just landed because someone in the chat's just talked about something. So you keep going, Sherry. These unrelated topics.
Yeah. So, and just to stress this, I'm being 100% serious. I have nothing linking these 2 stories together. Yeah. I just think it's funny to put them up side by side. Yeah. The other story, secrecy surrounds the arrest of a prominent New Zealander. RNZ understands the person was arrested last week. After being made aware of their arrest, RNZ approached the district court to see if there was any suppression orders and when the individual would be appearing in court. In response, registrar said the individual faced 8 charges, all of which are category 3 offences, meaning that the offence is punishable by imprisonment for life and imprisonment for 2 years or more. However, an application has been granted prohibiting media to be able to report the person's name. So, either way, both of these stories are interesting and I will be keeping my eye on them.
I'm always intrigued with that prominent person, what they actually mean. I remember there was one not too long ago. Oh, actually, it was quite a long time ago. And I don't know if the name was ever released, so I won't say who it was. But talking about, there was a child sex thing and a comedian, was listed as a comedian. And the person worked in and around the realms of comedy, but they weren't a comedian. Like that, you think about it, a comedian, someone who stands up with a microphone and like they weren't that. So it's always interesting to kind of see how they describe these people and what they are. I feel. Let me just say this. No. Let me say this. We can all see your tongue in your cheek, but we are genuinely have no idea.
I am being very genuine.
Yeah, there's no connection there. Even though people may see the joke that you're making, there is no connection there. It will be interesting to see.
There is absolutely no connection.
What happened?
If it turns out that there is a connection there, I will look like a fucking genius. Yeah, but there isn't.
But there isn't. And so we won't even say if there was. There's not.
This isn't nudge, nudge, wink, wink. This is Chewy doing a funny.
I had an experience, and I still don't know who it was actually. There was someone, a Dunedin, and I think they called them was it a broadcaster? There was some crime committed from Dunedin. I know what you're talking about. And I know some people who are in broadcasting down here, and I contacted someone, obviously I'm not going to say who, and they went, "Oh, it's me," and I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, "What?" And I was texting the person, and then after about the second text after they went, "Oh, I'm just kidding," and I was like, "You cannot do that! Holy shit!" So a friend of mine. So I saw actually. Did that ever come out? Do we know? Did that ever? Do we ever find out who that was? I don't even know.
No, because this is the thing about it, is that they always say it's like a prominent figure in the entertainment industry or broadcasting or something like that, and then it's they might be involved in the industry, but they're nowhere near as prominent as the story makes it sound.
Like a sales manager of a company that retired 10 years ago, but they were in broadcasting. So
yeah. But anyway, 2 unrelated stories worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, what's a prominent New Zealander? Like, what would you classify? Wouldn't be a councillor, would need to be a mayor, obviously a national politician, a sports person,
someone on the telly.
You know, but if it was a sports person, they'd say that. They'd say prominent sports person. Yeah. If it was a comedian, they'd say, so what is a prominent New Zealander? Because they probably would say actor, they probably would say singer. But then again, they may, but Chewy, just to say, if it was a politician, hypothetically, they probably would say politician. So what is a prominent New Zealander?
Look, we're running out of prominent New Zealanders. So I'm going to stake my career on the fact it's the Briscoes lady.
No, we're not going to do that. I'm just so I know, just so we're all 100%, it's not you, eh?
Fuck, if only I was prominent.
All right. I think it's time for us to go home now. I mean, hang on. We are home.
We work from home. That's why I'm so fulfilled.
That was strange. Yeah. No, I've just realised I haven't sorted my credits out. Give me 10 seconds. Do a dance or do a TikTok dance or something. What the
actually, because we like talking about things that would change when I come to power, I've come up with a new one over the bad weather that we had over the weekend.
Yeah.
If you own a white or grey car, then you should be forced to have your headlights on at all fucking times.
Oh, real? Makes a difference?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, no, obviously the headlight. I know the headlights make a difference, but is it harder to see white and grey, you think?
Yeah, because they fade into the misty, foggy bullshit that we had over the weekend. And people like, if you've got your wipers on, put your lights on.
Longer
sentences.
So we're going to turn it into a television review show and a talking about cars show. We're the new Top Gear in the world. When did daytime running lights, is that what they're called? When did they become sort of law? Surely that's 2010 onwards.
I don't think they're law.
Okay.
I think in other countries where we get our cars from, they're law. Like my car has daytime running lights all the time.
Well, every car past 2015's got them, surely.
Yeah. It seems like it's over. I don't think there's any New Zealand legislation around them.
All right.
Apart from they can't be different colours like blue.
I'm feeling you. Many wouldn't, but I am. All right, team. Hey, it was a big show tonight. We haven't told you that we're only going to do 3 shows this week, so this one makes up for 2. That's what we thought we'd do, actually. So this is worthy of 2. And then we're going to go to a pub quiz on Thursday night instead. We could live stream a pub quiz. That'd be fun.
Pub quiz.
Yeah, one day. Lots going on. I'm going to put this out there. Obviously, I like chasing impossible interviews. I should try and get Kneecap. I mean, if you could get through to them, they'd be the kind of group to say yes, I would think.
Bob Violin. It's a one in a death to the IDF.
It's 1 in a million, but we'll give it a crack. 1 in a million. We give that a crack.
Go listen to Bob Violin. That's your homework for tonight.
And we will catch you tomorrow at 9 o'clock for our next edition, I'm reckoning.
Chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things
All right, team. We'll catch you tomorrow night. Nothing else really from me, Chewy. Anything we need to know about for tomorrow night?
Just a breaking statement from Israel says that Kneecap and Bob Vylan are only weeks away from developing nuclear weapons. So that's big news.
All right. Thank you, team. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9. Be safe. Hooroo.
Cheers, man.